Hey everybody, it's Joel, and with me is Jason. Are you there? Jason's not there. Jason's having a lot of fun with his family doing his time off this summer. We will be back next week with a regular episode, but Jason loves y'all so much that he went ahead and recorded some news. So here's your Jason Fix with some news.
All right, so let's go and talk about some news. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the game that won the Spiel this year, and that is, no surprise, Azul. The Spiel, whoever does the Spiel posted on Facebook that won, and Michael Kiesling was pretty pumped. So, Spiel winner, Azul, no big surprise there. A kind of bigger surprise, I guess, was the Kinderspiel winner is called Die Quacksalber von Quedlinburg, which is a game that not a lot of people in America have heard of, which makes sense because the Kinderspiel is in Germany. But this is kind of like a press your luck game by the guy that did The Mind. Wolfgang Gorsch, I think is his name. But yeah, so he designed this game along with The Mind. The Mind didn't win, but this one did. So yeah, once this comes to America, you may want to check it out. I read about it. There's not a ton on BGG, but there is some. So yeah, that's Die Quacksalber von Quedlinburg. The next piece of news is Escape Plan, the new Vital Lacerda game, is on Kickstarter currently. It funded in 10 minutes. No big surprise because it's Vital Lacerda. And I think by the time of this recording, it's going to be 15 days before the project ends. So you still have some time to jump and back that if you want to. I think the price point is $75, I believe. So yeah, that's Escape Plan. It's a kind of a different feel from Vital. I guess it's more of like a medium weight than a medium heavy or a heavy game. So it might be a better jumping off point for some people who aren't used to Vital Lacerda games. So if you're interested in a Vital game to get some people into it, this might be the one for you. The next interesting piece is something we mentioned a few weeks back on the program, and that is the Homestar Runner board game called Trogdor, the board game. It's live on Kickstarter. It funded super quickly. It has over 11,000 backers. And essentially what you're doing in this game is you're trying to help Trogdor burn the night in the countryside. Yeah, everybody knows the Trogdor song. So yeah, if this game looks really cool, it has some neat little wooden bits. I'm not real 100% on the gameplay. It looks like there's some tiles, and as you move Trogdor around, you're going to flip over some of the tiles to burning tiles. You can burn some peasants, and they have little fire helmets they can wear on their head. Yeah, it's silly. It's Homestar Runner. Not too much more to say about that, but Trogdor the board game, still on Kickstarter. Go check that out. And the final piece of news that I wanted to talk about is a game that was out of print pretty quickly after it came out from, I think, Artipia Games, called Project Elite. And this game is now coming back later this year by Simon. It's going to hit Kickstarter, and what this game is it's a real-time dice-rolling tactical tower defense game. So everybody's like frantically rolling dice, and you're trying to protect your section of the board from baddies that are coming in. So it's a minis game, but a real-time minis game, which is different. So this may be one that I'm actually kind of interested in. So yeah, that's Project Elite. So if you want to see more on that, go check out Kickstarter later in 2018. And it'll be releasing in 2019. So yeah, that's the news.
Hey, thanks, Jason, for doing that news. And this week I had a chance to sit down with Zack Edwards, creator of Historical Conquest, and a new game that's coming to Kickstarter called Totally Medieval. These games are really neat. Zach gets really excited about them, and I do too, because they're educational games and the way that educational games should be done. And they're not a contrived, pasted-on educational theme, but the educational elements are part of the gameplay and integrated into the game in a way that kids are going to learn stuff and adults are going to learn stuff about history and about math that they never thought they would learn probably, and do it while having a lot of fun and maybe as a side effect. So it's kind of a cool gamification of these subjects that he's done, and I guess you can just listen to him talk about it in our interview right now. Hey, Joel here. I'm with Zack Edwards, And Zach, you are, I guess, a game designer, orchestrator who's made a couple of really neat games. And I guess just tell us a little bit about your history with creating board games.
So I grew up back in high school. I was playing Magic the Gathering, a lot of regular board games, everyone else playing like Risk, Monopoly, those type of games. But when I got into Magic, that whole realm opened up. But funny enough, my mom actually really disliked the fact of the ghouls, the goblins, basically the darker side of Magic. And even though I tried to talk her out of it, she was very adamant about me getting rid of my cards. So when she got this in her mind that she wanted me to get rid of it, it ended up that she had to negotiate with me to get rid of my cards. And I was turning 16, or I just turned 16, and I wasn't able to drive yet. So she said, in order for you to start driving, you have to get rid of your cards. I said, okay, I could do that. I mean, my priorities was I wanted to go date, I wanted to drive around. So of course I was going to get rid of my cards. But at the same time, I was able to go off to college a few years later. Now, I actually kept going with the game a little bit longer than she wanted. But when I got rid of the cards completely, a year later, I went off to college and I started up an English class where the teacher was trying to get us to create a product that would change the world. And it was supposed to be a one-page essay. So in this one-page essay, I saw that kids and people love to play games, but students back in high school hated the subject of history. And that at the same time, parents loved their kids wanted their kids to learn history and hated those games. I was like, there's got to be a happy medium somewhere. So this product that would change the world would be basically merging the two concepts together. So I created this one-page essay, and then every class that I went to, the gamification of my education started up right there. And every class I went to, the game developed. Everything I did in my life basically started to develop this game until all of a sudden I had a fully functioning game. And it was great.
Yeah. Typically people go to college for 4 years. This game was in development then essentially for 4 years. And then I'm guessing, it's a really refined game. Historical Conquest is the name of this game. And I've watched a few videos on it. I'm really fascinated by it, honestly. But I'm guessing this game seems super polished. I feel like you've probably been doing a lot of playtesting and just years and years beyond the 4 years in college, if I had to guess.
Yeah. So actually, college.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is. Actually, my college years was 15 years ago. So right after I developed it and printed it, I spent like 10 grand developing this game. And then all of a sudden I got married and my wife said, put away the game and go get a real job. So that's when
wives do that sometimes.
Yeah, they do. But it was, it's the best advice she could ever give me because I had so many life experiences that brought me to the point. So it sat on the shelf for 10 years and I was teaching some students about entrepreneurism. They wanted to see what I produced, so I brought it out. They wanted to play it, so I let them play it. And then all of a sudden they wanted more. And that's when we had to bring it out. And that's 5 years ago. Yeah.
That's great. It's really interesting how sometimes unconventional paths do end up with something really great happening. There's just, this great design in the universe that just things just kind of come together. And even in my own life, I've looked at, my experiences along the way have made me who I am now. And it seems like the same thing's true for you that, you probably weren't ready to put this game out and market it the way you are now when you were 22 years old. So it's probably good you had some years of wisdom and stuff in there to, kind of help you make this product even better. But yeah, I guess just before we move into it any further, the game, I'm going to just kind of give my impression of what I think the game is, and then you just correct me as I'm going. Please. It seems like you have some land cards that you're kind of trying to defend. Start off initially with one, and then you can kind of power that up by having certain kinds of explorer cards to unlock more lands. And then you have like defense and attack cards. But then also aside from that, there's a like kind of alternate path to victory where you can raise the morale of your people up to a certain level. So it could be a pacifist win almost if you had enough people that are going to try and make the people in your nation happy. And that's a gross oversimplification because there's all kinds of different decks and different possibilities of combinations. And it seems like the game really lives in the cards and the text on the cards and how they interact. But I think I think the comparisons to Magic the Gathering, I definitely get that it's a card-driven dueling game for sure. What else did I miss? What else would be important for people to know?
So have you ever played the game of Civilization?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Civ basically is historical conquest, but with cards.
Right.
I also compare it to the game of Risk, where, yeah, like you said, you can either dominate the world and take over all your opponent's land, or you can bring world peace and win that way as well. So the pacifist way. But the one thing that's really, I found that is really exciting for a lot of people is the fact that they're not fictional characters. They're not just somebody pulled out of an imagination, which is great for most games. And there are thousands of games out there like that. But this game, it's actual people from history. So you can play with Genghis Khan, George Washington, Tesla, and each of their abilities are based off the history that they had in real history. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so the kids are learning without knowing they're learning almost. They're having such a good time that the information is just getting in there. Mm-hmm. And I know the card that you cite a bunch is John Crapper. That's a fun card.
Yeah.
That, he increases morale. And it would. I mean, indoor plumbing, having a place to get rid of all that stink. I mean, that's going to be a real morale increase.
Yeah.
So for sure. I think it's neat. And I'm going to go ahead and just say I have parallels with your story as well. I did definitely play Magic. And I don't think my parents were I don't think I was probably as into it as you were, but I played in like the late 90s. And I always had kind of an unsettling, like weird feeling about some of those black and red cards in there. And so at one point I was just like, you know what? I don't really need to do this. And just kind of felt like a conviction personally about playing. And so I left Magic and I've gone back to Magic and left and whatever several times because it is such a good game. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there's just such dark imagery in that game sometimes that I'm always looking for a great alternative. So this seems like it's one that has a really great benefit in that it teaches kids stuff. So my son and I play Pokemon a ton because he loves Pokemon. But we have played Magic, but we kind of have a rule that we don't play black decks. We throw all the black cards away. Anything that says like Devil or Demon, we get rid of too, which is kind of like just me being a little bit conservative, I guess. But I know there are families that I'm friends with where there's no magic at all. There's no fantasy at all because they're really just concerned about that kind of stuff in their house. And so it seems like historical conquest is a really awesome way to get that kind of strategic card play kind of game into a house and not having to worry about like, is this something that's going to compromise like my core beliefs or, my character? So I really love that about it, to be honest. So,
there's one thing that's really interesting when it comes to the comparison between Magic. I've met a lot of Magic players that are like tournament champions, and they don't want to touch my game with a 10-foot pole when they first see it. It's like, it has to do with history. Don't want to touch it.
Yeah.
I asked them to sit down for 3 rounds, and 3 hours later, they've kicked everyone's butt because they've gotten some of the comparisons from Magic. So one example, I was up in Alaska, sat down with a teacher, and she had talked her daughter's boyfriend into sitting down and playing for 3 rounds. That's all she wanted. Just sit down for 3 rounds, tell me what it's like, because I'd like to bring this into school and show some more people this. So he sits down, and by the end of the game, he's stolen all of my land, his girlfriend's land, and his girlfriend's mom's land. So he ends up with like 15 lands. And the funny thing is that when he started playing the game, he was using rules that I hadn't even thought of, but they were completely within the rules.
Right. So he made some cards hit the blacklist potentially there or something. It feels like maybe, I don't know.
Well, it was great because they weren't overpowered. They weren't OP. They weren't the way he was playing. It was still manageable, but it was just new concepts that I hadn't even thought of. So that's why I love using these very veteran game players to manage the games that I produce. So I produce them and then I beta test them through them.
That's amazing. And then this is another thing too. You're going to go, whoa, this guy did his homework here. I was watching your YouTube channel a little bit, and you're like basically challenging people to stump you. say, can you find loopholes or like infinite loops or breaks in my game? And how do you do it? And let's talk about it. And I thought that was really cool. And I watched one of your videos about the Russian sniper who increases morale, I believe, and then the Alamo and kind of how they like synergize all these cards together. And I thought, man, somebody really passionately loves this game to like study these cards that hard and figure out how to do that. And I thought that was just, man, a really cool thing that you were just, and then you weren't like, well, no, you're misinterpreting the cards. You're like, whoa, that's cool. You figured that out. I mean, I thought that was a really neat approach you took to it.
So just an example. So I just went to a convention over the weekend, and while I was there, and now I'm not a person that's ever wanted publicity, wanted to have a fan base or any of that. And I go to this convention and there's kids asking for autographs and there's kids asking for to take pictures with me and wanting to play against the creator of the game. I've never wanted this kind of fanfare, and it's actually somewhat a little bit into the point of like embarrassing to me to some extent, but I've gotten used to it. But it's really interesting, the fact of being able to play with these people who are so passionate about my game, which again, it's amazing to me to see.
Yeah. And this is just my own personal.
Go for it. Sorry.
This is my own personal curiosity question for you here, Zach. I've got 2 games that I'm in the middle of development on myself. And like, I'm just kind of like tired of playing them, tired of play testing them, tired of developing rules for them. And they're rock solid games at this point, but I'm just tired of getting people to play them and push them. Did you ever feel that way as a game designer? Or was it something where you always just felt like, man, this is just really great and I'm going to dedicate what I can to it? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out, I know a lot of people that listen to our show are developing games. Like, what does it feel like? Are there highs and lows? Is it just, man, if you're in the right spot, you're in the right spot kind of thing?
I think all developers feel the same way that you felt. Just you're playing it over and over and over again. It doesn't matter if you play with 100 different people. So after it's all developed and you start play testing it with all these people, or not just play testing, just playing it with all these other people, it's like, wow, this is like you're playing it constantly, and there it does become I lost the word, but not tired, but there's another word that has to do with it. But you all of a sudden get really tired to some extent of playing over and over and over again. But then I've actually done it playtesting a lot of different ways. One of the best ways I see is most effective is actually what we did with our new game, Totally Medieval. And this is where we brought in, we asked our fans if they wanted to pre-order the new game. And we had 60 people sign up. In less than a month, we had about 60 people sign up and wanting to buy it, to pre-order it. And then I said, hey, I've got another opportunity if you'd like. How about I send all of you guys the prototypes? And we're sending out 5 at a time. And then they actually send it off to the next 5. But
that's really cool.
Yeah, well, they're completely vested in it. And because they've already pre-ordered, they want the perfect game. And the best way to get that perfect game is to give the most feedback and also to pass it on to the next person and let them give the feedback. And so this is actually, the new game is actually being tested out 60 times, or 60 different people playing it however many times. And we have a Facebook page that we go through all the critiques and any kind of bugs that they find, so that we can get rid of those bugs. And this way, I don't have to play it 100 different times, time after time after time. But I let everyone else that already loves the game to take hand of it and take ownership in it.
Yeah, and that's great. You must have some really passionate fans, because I've been involved with a couple different play tests, and the first time you're play testing a game, you're like, oh man, this is amazing. You know, John Gilmore designed this, or, you know, Jimmy Stegmaier designed this, and I'm getting to see it before everyone else. But about the 4th play, you're like, I'm so tired of doing these logs and trying to find these, you know, breaks and loops and stuff. And it's really important that you get good play testers. So good on them that they're doing it for you and trying to make this thing as great as possible. But it really speaks a lot for how much Historical Conquest has been a game that people believe in. I mean, if they think your next product has the potential that Historical Conquest has and they're that passionate about it, that's a huge endorsement right there, I would say. So anyway, I guess talking about the new game, talk to me about the new game. The thing I'm really most interested in it, and I mean, there could be more things in this that are interesting, but the fact that, you know, I could have my nephew who's in 2nd grade and has basically learned his addition facts playing against me, who I've taught, you know, pre-calculus, that we could somehow make a game that's competitive between the two of us, but we're using our math acumen to do combat or movement or different mechanics of the game. How does that work? How do you differentiate that big gap between players?
So before I go into that, the one thing that I had to do as my niche in gaming is I wanted to make all my games somewhat have an educational spin. But at the same time, a lot of the educational spin scares people away, as I mentioned before. Just the thought that, oh, it's a math game, or oh, it's an educational game. So I have Historical Conquest, which is the history. This new game, Totally Medieval, is about math. But we basically removed the dice from the game. So you can play Totally Medieval with a pair of dice and have a really fun game. Or you could take the dice out and replace them with what we call dice cards. It's basically the same thing as dice, except you pull a flashcard up and there's an equation on there. And say you're learning adding and subtracting, you would have those cards in front of you, or at least your opponent would have those cards. And when it's your turn to roll, your opponent lifts that card up. You answer the equation. If you get it right, you get a certain roll. There's a point system to it.
That's great.
So in that way, I could be learning adding and subtracting. You could be learning Algebra 1, and we could play the exact same game.
That's really cool. And just last episode, Jason and I were talking about dungeon crawls and just kind of talking about how you can't reinvent the wheel too many times in dungeon crawls. And so we've seen some really great growth in Euro type games over the last 5 years or so, that all these new mechanics have come out and these new innovations of meshing up mechanics has happened. And we kind of concluded that you can only do move and roll so many different ways. So the fact that you're innovating too, I could see where people potentially may be interested, even outside of an educational setting, saying, hey, this is mechanically at least a little different than just chuck and die. And it's not just luck. So you play with the math variant anyway. I mean, I think that's a really neat way to do it.
Yeah, we want to bring something in that was new, like you were saying, because there's so many great games out there. There's thousands of games coming out every year, and we want to distinguish ourselves a little different and something that they can gain from. And so, yeah, if this is a new development in the gaming or dice realm, then great. I'd love to be part of that.
Yeah, it's neat. I mean, I think just for the sake of it being different and new, I would give it a shot with the dice cards instead of just dice. I think that'd be pretty neat for sure. Now, so then there's basically, let's talk more about the game here a little. There's basically a playmat that you have that's like spatially, you arrange your miniatures on this playmat and then you do movement and kind of, I mean, what's the basic core of this game? I haven't really gotten a firm grasp on this one yet.
So this is a game where basically it's not just you against your opponent. It's you against the board against your opponent. So the board is actually against you. It can help you and hinder you. The game board actually changes every time you play because you have cards that are your terrain. And when you move out there's different rectangles around the board, and you place these terrains upside down on the board, so you don't know exactly what kind of terrain you're going to hit when you step on it. And then when you move your person forward, your army or an individual card or figurine, then you can basically find out what's going on, and it might actually kill you off just by stepping on that one terrain. So there's some that you're going to want to avoid. As soon as they're turned over, you'll know where they are. But there's another mechanic that's really interesting. This is a game that a lot of people love miniatures. They love to play with a tabletop game, but there's some people that don't want to play with miniatures. And you can actually play with the cards themselves that you're turning over. But so basically two ways of doing this. One, you place the card down on the board on each of the rectangles, you move them forward, or you take your cards off the table, you hold them in your hand so they're back behind so your opponent doesn't see them, and you have figurines that take their place. So you can play either way, play with cards or you can play with figurines. Another thing that's really interesting in this game, and not to go too far off the gameplay itself, but it's the same, all my miniatures are the same configuration as the game of chess. So there's 1 king, 1 queen, 2 rooks, 2 bishops, 2 knights, and 8 pawns. So you can actually take all the figurines off and play on the game of chess. So it's a dual purpose pieces.
That's really cool. Well, and then the ideas of chess are pretty familiar to players. So as someone's getting into this game, you have a starting point to say, you played chess. Here's something that we can build on. You know, I think that's a neat way to get someone into a more advanced game, because we're always looking for gateway games, like, you know, getting those guys who've played Risk and chess to go a little deeper, you know. So that's kind of cool if there's any kind of crossover at all. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, like when it's historical conquest, I always compare it to like the game of Risk or Civilization and the game of Magic. This one, I could say it's basically the game of chess, but with more strategy to it.
Yeah. And a little less abstracted, it seems like, if there's actual combat happening and things like that, which makes it kind of more appealing, honestly. So yeah, that's really neat.
And the good thing is that it gives it more realism when it comes to actually, real life and playing. Because a king or a queen would go out. I mean, queens are more powerful than the king. Not to be sexist or anything like that, but most likely it's going to be the king that goes out to battle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah. So in this game, to go back into the gameplay, you're basically placing the figurines on the board. You're going out to all these different terrains. When you meet up with your opponent's characters or miniatures, then that's when you end up battling. Now, there's one thing that I haven't mentioned. There's actually, so you have your terrain, which is different all on the board, but you also have new weather patterns every round. So
that's a neat mechanic.
Yeah. So every round you turn over a new weather pattern, and it might help you or hinder you. The knights would rather fight in the clear skies, while someone like the Vikings would rather fight in the rain or the hail or snow. Basically something that gives them an advantage because they're more extreme. And so there's 5 different things that you count up when you have an attack. You count up their strength. You count up any kind of benefit the terrain might give you. The weather pattern. If you have illness, because you can actually have catch the plague or leprosy. And then you can also have the dice. So there's actually 5 things to bring in there. So it's not about, I'm going to roll the dice and luck happens and I might win the game or I might win the battle. But all these different things are things that you would be watching for. I want to hit the right weather pattern. I want to be able to fight on the right terrain. And if I get all those things in the right place, I'm going to win the battle every time.
Yeah, it's a neat idea, the weather. And I went ahead and pulled up your Kickstarter while we were talking here, and wow, I am really impressed with your sculpts. These look like they're definitely paint grade miniatures that you have in this game. They're really nice looking mock-ups you have. These are definitely paint grade, I'm assuming, right?
They are, yeah. We actually, everything that we do, we want to be eye-catching to the player, not just we don't use we want to be able to be epic in everything that we do. So like with Totally Medieval, we had to get the best sculptors to give us the figurines that would really bring the people in and be excited about it. And so, yes, they can actually paint every single part of them. Yeah,
they're really excellent looking miniatures, which, I mean, that tells me you're going to have a really good Kickstarter. Kickstarter loves their miniatures for sure. So I'm looking at it right now, and it has 30 days to go as of we're recording on Tuesday. When you're hearing this on Friday, you're going to have 25 plus days to go. But go check out it's Totally Medieval, the Epic Adventure is the Kickstarter. It's really looking like a nice product. And I didn't ever I'm seeing your final art and seeing all this stuff. And man, you did a really nice job with the presentation on this. It's
I appreciate that.
Really great. Looks really nice.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, very much. And then you went with playmats instead of boards, which I am a huge fan of as well. I don't particularly like boards. Playmats and I think you did playmats as well for the other game. It looks like there's such a good.
I've been converted to it. See, I used to play boards and I loved boards, and then all of a sudden they showed me playmats. I'm like, if I could, I'd never go back.
Yeah,
and it's this whole sense of like with playmats. I'm not supposed to say it. I mean, it's not guaranteed, but a lot of times I've had people spill on the playmats, and we throw it in the wash,
right?
And all of a sudden you get a brand new board back. So right. Yeah,
as long as you don't dry it, you'll be fine usually.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, they do a good job. And then the other thing too is like, if you fold a board wrong once, it's never going to lay flat the right way, or it's going to have some kind of weird split in it. Where a playmat, if you roll it the right way, it's going to lay flat every time and just be really nice. So it looks like you definitely did not go chintzy at all with your with your components or anything like that. And it looks like a pretty robust game. So the thing that's interesting about this is if you're listening to this, I would check it out as a gamer because it looks like a rock solid game for gamers out there. But the other thing too is I think everybody knows teachers. Everybody has a teacher aunt or a teacher neighbor. Tell the teachers in your life about this because this is something that I think right now teachers are struggling. This is me talking from experience. Teachers are really struggling to try and engage kids in a meaningful way and a productive way. We're in the age of cell phones and distractions and just, it's hard to keep kids' attention. The sage on the stage, lecture kids model of a classroom just doesn't work as well anymore. And so this is a way for kids to learn math. And it looks like it's set up for, kids from 7 to 17 would benefit. Beyond 17 would benefit from this game, with some of the skills they're going to learn academically. And then the other thing too, is I am a huge fan of games, period. Teach you things like probability. They teach you things about like planning and organization and some of these soft skills that we don't get a chance to teach kids. So if you're a teacher out there and you're hearing this or you know of a teacher, tell them to check this out. I'm a huge fan of this and I want to support you because I want to see more of this. I want to see the industry grow in a way where we can gamify education. And we're seeing things become gamified all the time. Even our ads that we watch on our cell phones are like little mini games that we can play and just stuff like that. Just everything's going to become a game is what they're predicting. And, our ATMs will have, Brick Breaker on them eventually or something. So, it's just a really cool thing you're doing here. Absolutely love it. So I would say check out the Kickstarter if you're hearing this and you're a gamer, but also tell those teachers out there. If you've got, someone in your family or your world that's a teacher, or if you had a really great teacher that did innovative things, check this out because it's something that I think this game could possibly have the potential to take kids that would be lost and not able to complete that math curriculum and get high school diplomas, are at risk of, failure or not going to college and potentially motivate them to want to, learn the math and learn things to get better. And I'm going to tell you right now in my own personal life example, going back to Magic, those cards are so kids love those cards so much. So I ended up buying a box of commons and I teach kids that have emotional difficulties and they have behavior issues. And so I had a couple kids that were just really struggling. And so I took, I do at home, I took all the real dark cards out and left just kind of the natural nature cards kind of thing. And I just had commons. And if these kids would have a good day, not get any referrals to the office, stay attentive in class, I'd give them a couple cards, which cost 4 cents or something. But these kids thought it was the greatest thing ever. And they were learning how to play the mechanics of the game and stuff. And I kind of had to set some rules about, what I allowed and didn't allow in my room, thematically. But just kids want to play games. Kids want to learn. And so you're offering two really awesome opportunities for kids to do it in a safe way that there's not that crazy dark stuff in it. Which to me, it matters. I know to some people it doesn't. To me, it definitely matters. And then there's also this benefit of this is real stuff. This is real historical stuff. That Russian sniper, and I can't even think of her name right now, or I wouldn't even try and pronounce it. But I ended up going to her wiki page after you guys mentioned her and learned all about this sniper who was this huge hero of World War II. And I don't know, she should be championed as a feminist almost or something, too. She did some really awesome stuff. And so even not even playing your game, just researching your game, I learned about historical figures. So that's historical conquest. Hopefully Totally Medieval will do the same thing for kids learning their math facts and learning stuff like that. And then also, there's other math things and logic things in there too that they're learning, how to plan, how to mitigate damage, how to, figure out their probability for success, just different things like that are just developed into any game. So really cool stuff, Zach. I really like it.
Hey, I appreciate it so much. Thank you. Yeah.
Anything else, Zach? Anything we missed?
No, I got a lot of things to talk about, but I think for right now, this is great. I really appreciate all the opportunity I had to come on and come to your show and talk about these things. And I hope to be able to talk a little bit more about other things we have, including stuff like you're talking about, gamifying the whole education system and putting opportunities out there so that young people can feel excited about what they're learning. And you know what? In the next go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say in the next 3 years, we're actually planning to do almost every subject in games. We have even one that's coming out that a professor's writing right now. We're going to gamify it, but it has to do with Shakespeare. And a lot of people, they see
that's cool.
Shakespeare like, oh no. And yet we're making it like I won't spoil it, but it's going to be really fun when it comes out. And that's going to be something that hopefully people will have a different perspective on Shakespeare after playing a game.
Yeah. There's a video game called To Be or Not to Be. And it's kind of a fun game where you can choose to make the decisions Shakespeare made or like divert from them. And it kind of like does some stuff tongue in cheek with Shakespeare and how like kind of messed up some of his stuff is. And I think it's kind of cool that if kids can see that in 3D and see, wait a minute, Shakespeare was making a really like risky decision by doing this, or he was doing some really controversial stuff that we view as like pretty bland nowadays. That would really make that history come alive, but then also the ELA standards too. So whenever you get that language arts game done, let me know. Cause that's my subject right now. It's so hard to get kids engaged in writing and reading. And if you can find a way to do it in a way that gamifies it, that'd be great.
Challenge accepted.
Well, and then there's, I don't like just an example from my own life too. I'm a teacher and I have the toughest kids in the whole school as far as their behavior concern stuff goes. And so I've introduced this software or like a website called Classcraft, and it's all about social emotional skills. And it's like you have this avatar and you're powering this avatar up by doing the right things in class and raising your hand and being attentive. And then you can even like integrate it with like class quizzes and things like that. And it's just the kids, you wouldn't think it, but like these fake points for their fake characters just drive kids nuts, man. They work like crazy to try and get them. So it just works. It's like our brains have this deep rooted need to be competitive, solve problems, be productive. And so when we make things into games, it kind of matches those needs up. So by making these school subjects into games, I absolutely love it. And Zach, I hope to have you on in the future as more projects come out, because this really hits my interests for sure. So,
well, it's really cool. I've actually been taking notes while you were talking, because you got a lot of different things that I haven't thought of or that I really need to emphasize when putting these games together. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. We're going to have a spinoff podcast come out of this. Probably we'll be the education boys. I don't know what we'll be talking about, gamifying these things or whatever. So if you liked what you heard from Zach and you want to hear more, he's got an excellent web presence out there. If you go to historicalconquest.com, you can get pretty well, I think, to all the social media stuff, all to the YouTube videos and a lot of different things out there. If this sounds like something that's interesting to you, I think that you do an excellent job with connecting with your community on your different platforms. I honestly, probably spent an hour and a half just kind of like creeping your stuff and just kind of checking out what you're doing. And I was really interested in it. So if this sounds like something that might be interesting, or again, the plea is get teachers to learn about this stuff. Teachers are dying out there for curriculum ideas and ideas for engaging kids. And if they knew this thing was out there, man, I think they would eat it up. So just spread the word. Word of mouth is the best way, so let the teachers in your life know about Totally Medieval and Historical Conquest. And I look forward to seeing what you do here in the future, Zach. It looks really great.
Thank you. I'll keep you posted.
I appreciate it. Good deal. Anything else, Zach?
Nope. I think we're good. I do have, well, I again, I could talk to you forever about these type of things, but again, I just appreciate it. And yeah, I'll come back on another time and
I love it
more as it
sounds
comes.
Good. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now so we can talk off the record about your top secret project. I'm lying right now. We won't do that. But at any rate, yeah. Thanks, Zach. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Hey, and like I said, next week we'll be back with a regular episode, guys. Thanks for bearing with us this week. I hope you enjoyed the episode anyway. Anyway, thanks for listening. I'll talk to you guys later. I guess I can do an outtake. I don't know. I just had a duty accident. Oh no. Hee hoo hee. Ba-doom ba-dam bum bum bum.